I want to pick up a piece that I did yesterday to turn my attention to not to the seasoned statesman or the veteran of diplomatic nuance, but to Fidias Panayiotou, the Cypriot YouTuber who's now an MEP, whose astonishing popularity at the ballot box has swiftly collided with the harsh brick wall of global responsibility and maturity, neither of which he possesses. We have to speak of influence, of ignorance, of the grotesque denial of fact, especially Panayiotou's minimalization of one of the most harrowing crimes of the war in Ukraine, the forced deportation of Ukrainian children by Russian forces. Fidias is, by all accounts, a social media phenomenon. His transition from pranks and YouTube stunts to parliamentary prominence is a parable of our age, but his entry into politics has exposed not the power of fresh voices, but the danger of shallow thinking in deep water. And he gathered attention in the European Parliament by declaring Europe's moral compass broken, not in condemnation of the Kremlin's aggression, but in criticism of European sanctions and diplomatic disengagement from Russia. And this is met rightly with pointed rebukes from the German MEP Moritz Körner, who asked whether Fidias had ever been to Ukraine. He hadn't. He was afraid. He admitted in the video, in the interview that he gave to Caolan Robertson. And yet, he then popped up in Moscow in his personal capacity, we're told, for meetings with Russian politicians during the country's so-called Victory Day period. Now, I know from my own trips to Moscow that it is almost impossible to simply book a flight from a European country like the UK to Moscow without going through a Moscow agency, without going through a state authority that arranges visas and so on. So the idea that he did this entirely off his own back, without help from Russia, from the Russian state, is laughable and ridiculous. And he's the Cypriot president, Nikos Christodoulidis, has publicly said, "I do not agree with what Fidias did. He's made a mistake." I think it's worth at this moment just looking at some of the coverage which Caolan Robertson's film is getting, and rightly so.
What are you talking about? What do they want to be? They are children that were kidnapped by Russia. What do they want to be?
Ο Κύπριος Ευρωβουλευτής απάντησε με άνευ περιεχομένου επιχειρήματα, γέλιο και έκδηλη αμηχανία, εκθέτοντας σοβαρότατα την Κύπρο και το λαό της.
A lot of kids, they want to return and they should return if they want. How do you know out of these 20,000 children, every one of them wants to return?
This is ludicrous that you would say that children that have been kidnapped from their homes that have been bombed, want to be with their kidnappers and return. This is actually one of the most insidious things I've ever heard from someone.
Okay.
Μέσα από τη συνέντευξη έπεσαν οι μάσκες, ο Ευρωβουλευτής θύμωσε και δεν έδωσε απαντήσεις γιατί διαδίδει ψεύδι, αναφέρει ο δημοσιογράφος στα μέσα κοινωνικής δικτύωσης με την ανάρτησή του, αλλά και το βίντεο της συνέντευξης να καταγράφουν μέσα σε διάστημα λίγων ωρών δεκάδες χιλιάδες προβολές.
But it's not just his grandstanding or even his diplomatic gallivanting that should that should concern us the most. It's his grotesque equivocation over the fate of thousands of abducted Ukrainian children. In the interview published yesterday by Caolan Robertson, the masterclass in forensic calm dismantling of political self-delusion, Panayiotou suggested that some of these children taken from occupied Ukraine in Russia might want to remain. How do you know some of the children aren't happy there, he asked. This is not diplomacy, this is not neutrality, this is gaslighting on a global scale. And to be clear, the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Russian officials over the unlawful deportation of Ukrainian children. And the UN, the Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International have documented systemic forced transfers and indoctrination. This is not a matter of interpretation, it's a matter of war, crime and fact. And Panayiotou voted against a European Parliament resolution calling for the return of 20,000 Ukrainian children, one of only 3 MEPs to do so, and he later changed his vote to an abstention. The damage, of course, was already done. The backlash has been swift and righteous, and today Greek and Cypriot newspapers ran headlines decrying his remarks some calling him an embarrassment, others urging the public to reflect on how such a figure topped the electoral list. And it's worth pausing, for Fidias is not merely a misguided novice, he's a warning that charisma without comprehension, very virality without veracity, populism without principle can win elections and wreak havoc in the process. So what do we learn? Firstly, quite apart from the fact that Caolan Robertson is one of the most articulate journalists in the business, that the European Parliament is not a reality show. It's not a stage for personal branding. It's a chamber where laws are made, where wars are condemned, where crimes against children must never, ever be relativized, where someone like Fidias must be called out. And if it takes Caolan Robertson to do so, that is spectacular. That is why this is all over the Greek media and the Cypriot media. Secondly, we must take seriously the ethical vacuum that can accompany online stardom. Millions of followers do not translate into moral literacy. Simply, popularity is not accuracy. Popularity is not veracity. Popularity is not truth. Popularity is not honesty. Popularity is not fact. And finally, let's insist that those who speak with authority with the authority of elected office also speak with the burden of knowledge. The children stolen from their families do not need glib conjecture from fools. Fidias the fool. It doesn't matter how genial, how charming, how big his smile may be, he's still a fool. These children need justice, and their abductors need accountability, and the children need to be returned home. Fidias Panayiotou may be afraid to go to Ukraine, but after this performance he should be even more afraid to return to the European Parliament. He should be even more afraid about what history will say about him and how he is exposed as a fool, as an idiot. I shouldn't use the word idiot, because the word idiot in Greek simply means an individual. He is an individual, idiotiko, and he is wrong. Wrong, and he needs to be called out repeatedly as somebody who is wrong. I would like to see him say that he's wrong.